Hi everyone, welcome to episode 6 of our series. We're talking with Liana from Sweden today. Liana owns a relocation immigration firm. This is going to be a really interesting episode because Sweden has taken a completely different approach to many other countries around the world with how they've handled the coronavirus and the lockdown provisions. So I'm going to pass it over to Liana to introduce herself and her company, and then we're going to jump into some discussions about changes to the Swedish immigration program, and also Liana is going to share some great top tips with us.
Great, thank you. My name is Lena and my firm is called Immersion. We founded this company 25 years ago in May. So that's an exciting time, and this is probably the most interesting time that I have lived through in these 25 years, and we've had some crises. I think so. This will be a lifetime event. But and just like you said, Sweden is an outlier. It's open, an open society. We don't have lockdown. It's mostly self-regulatory. A lot of people are very, very careful. We look at our neighbors and our European and friends around the world and how they are living, and we're obviously adapting to that. But although there is no legal basis for prohibiting us to go out and so on. So when it comes to immigration, I had 3 points that I wanted to bring up today that is related to the situation we were in with the COVID. And the first one is really good news. The migration agency is open. There are no delays. They are working from home and things are running very smoothly. So we're really proud of them, and it's great. And we didn't expect it to be this good, but it's working perfectly.
And the Swedish immigration program is largely online, correct?
Yes.
So
since years. So we're very fortunate. There's very little in-person meetings. There are no original documents. This is business immigration. So everything is online, which makes it, we're well prepared for a situation like this.
Perfect. That's fantastic. I know in the US, we've been struggling. The US government has been great and flexible in allowing us to use digitally reproduced signatures, for example, but we still are having to do a handover of paper petitions and file with original checks to the government. So having an online system definitely makes sense, especially with situations like this.
Yeah, it's been in place probably for, I don't know, well over 10 years. So it's been tweaked and improved a lot over that time, but now it works perfectly. The other thing as an employer to keep your eye on, so if you have people on work permits that haven't yet been able to come here due to travel bans, either here it's been in place for about 6 weeks, and it is in place for another 2 weeks along with the rest of the Schengen countries, or that there simply are no flights. You still have to, it is stipulated in the law that you have to report to work within four months. And if you are unable for any reason, including a pandemic, unable to report to work in the Swedish workplace within 4 months and register locally here, you will not be able to renew that permit. So there are no exceptions in spite of the COVID that we see in most of the countries. They have auto renewals and so on, but we don't have that here.
So how do you handle that as an employer then?
You have to cancel the application and reapply.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. We can't do anything about that.
And I don't think that any number of times, so there's not going to be a limitation on
No, there's no limitation. There's no penalties, or there's nothing strange to do. Obviously, we work with a lot of firms that have big projects here, and as we all know, projects tend to be delayed or they change, or the particular skill that you have may not be needed in September, it's needed in January instead, and then you're just over the 4-month threshold, and then you have to cancel the old permit and reapply.
Okay, now let's change gears to individuals who are in Sweden currently on a work permit. How do they handle extensions? We touched some European countries have automatic extensions. Does Sweden have that?
No, we don't. So if you're staying, some people are sort of trapped here because they can't go home even though they should because their project is over. We see a lot of our clients that then extend, they get to do something else because they can't go back. There are a lot of countries that are completely closed even for their own nationals, so they can't go back or there are no flights. But then they can stay on, and there are a couple of different visa types that they can do. Other than that, people that are still in the country and maybe given what in the UK you call furlough, we call it short-term work allowance. So you reduce the hours, and that's a really tricky and very sensitive matter that needs to be conducted with care. Depending on whether you have a union agreement or if you're outside the union, different rules apply. But you have to make sure that regardless that it is on par with the union stipulated levels. And you can never have a salary that is less than 13,000 kroner, which is around 900 pounds, or around maybe 1,100, 1,200 euros, around that level. So you have to be very careful with your work permit holders because you can unknowingly easily make a mistake that will prevent a renewal and later permanent residencies. So it's always advisable to talk to an expert and just make sure that not like a small nuance will prevent a renewal at a later date.
And if there are changes to terms of employment, should they be reported prior to the changes taking place, or do you have a grace period with which you can comply, so maybe 30 days after the change? Or?
It depends on how much of it that has changed. So it's hard, it's not a yes or no question. Sometimes, yes, you need to report it because somebody actually changed the role and that position may need to be advertised. And what we also see is that there have been pretty massive layoffs in the tech sector, for instance, and all the techies, they are very much sought after. So there's still a great market for them. They can find new jobs. And before they start the new jobs, there are some hoops to go through just to make sure everything is done correctly. So that is probably the biggest risk. It's when you change employer in the first work permit period, which is the first 2 years.
Okay, there's some great information there. Now let's talk about any government relief programs. How do they impact anyone who's currently on a work permit in Sweden?
Well, as long as they don't get a salary that's below the threshold, that's fine. But it also has to correspond. So we get reports and we see them in the papers. I don't think that necessarily applies to people that work with digitization or are engineers, but that you get reduced work hours, let's say by 60. So you work 60% rather than 100, but then your salary must also be 60%. You can't get 60% of your salary and work 100%.
Okay.
And then you, of course, you run into the problem that I think any entrepreneur or any, like yourself, a lawyer with a law firm, what is 100%?
Right.
But that's actually stipulated by law. So it's somewhere between 37.5 hours and 40 hours per week. While we all know that a lot of passionate people and talents are in exciting projects and they work far more than that, and they probably work on weekend too. And it's not because they're forced to, but it's because they love what they do.
How about, have there been any changes that would impact permanent residence applications in Sweden?
No, I mean, what can be impacted is that not all terms have been followed from the start. Okay. And there are a few things that can trip up such an application. And normally we would know that because we have seen it. We try to take our clients through all the formalities so they follow the protocols. So we don't, you know, the permanent residency starts with a first work permit. So everything has to be done as per the required steps. Where we see the most problems is when maybe that a position wasn't advertised, or that you get promoted and forget to update the work permit during the first 2 years, or that there is a missing insurance, perhaps. Some things can be corrected retroactively, not everything can, or that the salary isn't what it was promised. But I would say we see mistakes, but that's usually when somebody has come with one company and has changed employer.
Right.
Most things can be taken care of, but it has to be taken care of at the right time. So if we do a lot of visa explorations, and that's when you have a change of employer, and it's just to make sure that the advertising has been done for the right amount of time on the right platforms with the right information and so on. And also a sort of a pre-assessment if this is a person who will be able to go through a work permit process and get an approval.
Right. Okay, so I mean, I think this has been a common theme throughout all the episodes, remaining compliance despite the fact that COVID may impact normal operations, but it seems in Sweden that normal operations is still continuing, which is great, and remaining compliance. Let's move swiftly into top tips. So what would you be recommending to HR, immigration, mobility professionals during this time to focus on?
I think they have so many things to focus on. So I would say talk to experts about immigration. And don't forget that immigration is actually part of somebody being laid off. We've been running webinars on this just to help HR understand the basic stuff. And then just hand it over so you don't make mistakes, because they have such an enormous amount of things to do and not all pleasant. We've been in a fantastic growth period for a very long time. So I think a lot of HR people are for the first time encountering the less glamorous and pleasant portions of what the HR job is. And to not have to think about immigration and worry about making a mistake there, reach out to somebody that can help you. So I would say that's my main tip. But then also make sure they can arrive on time within 4 months. So keep an eye on the Schengen and the travel bans and what's going on with the airlines. That's another thing. And also there's hope. The migration agency is open. Things are working really, really well. I would say that we are in a great position compared to a lot of other countries where, as you point out, you have to go in person to places, and then for all the obvious reasons, public offices have been closed for some time.
Right. Well, that's some great information, great tips there. And it's really amazing to hear how well Sweden is coping with this and how their different approaches enabled, it seems like, most businesses to continue as business as usual. So Sweden looks to be very forward thinking, and we love to hear that. So anyone that does have questions, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Probably my LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
Is easiest, or we have an email, info@nimmersion.com, and then we pick it up right away. We're very fast responders. We're not first responders, but we're fast responders. So, or lena@nimmersion.com, and I'll pick it up right away. So.
Okay, brilliant.
That's the easiest.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I know all the viewers watching will love the information you've shared. To everyone watching, thank you for watching. Please comment if you have questions, please like, and please share this. But thank you very much, and everyone stay safe.